Hello everybody and welcome to another video. A couple of weeks back on my channel I put out a video called Starting Over. In this video I discussed the fact that I was going to make a ranger for Gw2, that's who I'm playing right now, this lovely Asura ranger. And I discussed the fact that I wanted to do things a little bit differently. When you get to maybe your third character, fourth character certainly, leveling can become a bit of a chore and you fall into certain patterns. My patterns were map completing as quick as possible, you know, just staring at my map the entire time going, you know, heart, point of interest, heart, vista, skill point, spamming my way through early level maps as quickly as I possibly could, then rushing maybe to somewhere like Edge of the Mist to level up super quickly, perhaps finish things off with a bit of crafting, which I absolutely hated, a massive money and time sink, but you know, once I got to level 60 I'd just craft my way to 80 and then I'd be happy and I'd play that character for maybe a couple of days, feel very little connection to them, you know, very different to my first few characters perhaps, and end up putting them down and feel like I sort of missed out big time. It was nothing like when I had played at launch, for example, with Liss. My Necromancer and my Thief, you guys might not even know who they are. They are characters I've got on my account, but I barely play them, and I think it's really because of the mentality I and a lot of other players fall into when we start leveling again. So, I put out this video called Starting Over. I wanted to play the game with a really fresh perspective, and I wanted to give myself some rules. This tends to be something I do. If you ever look at my old Guild Wars 1 Let's Play, particularly the first one, I had a very limiting set of rules, we'll say that much. But I wanted to add all these rules and these ways of playing the game that would make it a lot more fun. And this is going to be a log about basically how I've experienced the game. If you check out my level here, I'm around level 20. You could say that's a quarter of the way through the game, like level-wise. I've just started some of the order quests. I'm on a level 24 quest here at Garenhof at the moment, and I've learned a lot about how to enjoy the game and things that I had forgotten. So let me go through the rules and talk to you guys about how I think these things have worked out. For the record, I'll open by saying I think this has been incredibly fun, and this will probably not be the only character that I do this on. First and foremost, this is sort of like a permadeath character, okay? One of the rules I originally stated in that old video was I said, hey, I'm gonna, if my pet dies, then I can't use it again, like a kind of a Nuzlocke thing, if you're familiar with Pokemon Nuzlocke challenges. I've scrapped that. I actually didn't think it was that fun. My pets were dying every now and then. I honestly haven't come across too many pets. If I show you my grid here, I haven't come across too many pets just yet. It didn't seem like it was that much of a value add to the gameplay. However, the idea of my character having some sort of permadeath element to them has been very fun. In fact, this character I decided to give myself 10 lives. What this would mean is if I die 10 times and I fail, the challenge is over. In theory, I would delete the character and I would have to start again. The entire point of the challenge isn't necessarily to get a level 80, but it's to beat Zaitan. It doesn't mean you have to do any of the dungeons, but you have to get from the start of the game to the end of the game. That includes a Ra story mode, that's the only dungeon you'd have to do. With a limited number of lives. So for this character, I started really soft, okay, very soft core. I've given myself 10 lives. I've used up one of those already. And in fact, there's a very trolly vista in Ratasum that you sort of have to die to get if you're not using waypoints. But I think for future characters, I would just, you definitely can, it's very viable in Guild Wars 2, to just play a character that is permadeath. And that's the kind of thing I think you could stream. Streaming something I've really wanted to get into and could eventually end up doing, trying to complete that challenge. If you die, you delete the character, you start over. Who can complete the challenge? I'll talk more about how this life restriction has affected the way I play in some really positive ways in just a second, but we'll go into some other rules, okay? One of the other rules I've come to play with, of which, honestly, there aren't too many I've come to find. Like, in that original video I put up, Starting Over, I made it sound like there was this whole heap of things I was going to be doing. It might have even been off-putting. A lot of you guys said you were inspired and you wanted to do it for yourselves, but I can also understand it having been off-putting to people. But really, there's not too many rules. A restriction on lives, 10 for me, but I think it will be 1 in future, especially if I stream it. It'll be one of those fun things where, you know, I inevitably die somewhere, and then I make a new character, and then people on the stream can end up naming that character, you know, you go again, and next time you avoid that thing or that area that managed to kill you unexpectedly before. But another rule that I've been playing with that has massively changed the way I'm playing the game is I have no maps. So you'll notice it right here on my UI, down in the bottom right hand corner, there is no map. I can mouse over and it will tell me where I am, what region of the world I'm in, Wizards 5, but the map itself isn't there. I have no minimap, and I'm not allowed to use the big map as well. If I press M on my keyboard right now, nothing comes up. Now that's something I deliberately did. I bound my big map to Control M, right? So if I want to open my big map, I really have to make a big effort. I have to stretch my hand out, you know, I have to use my pinky and my index finger to get across the keyboard to actually open it up. This allows me, if I'm playing on another character, to still use my map, but while I'm on this toon, I cannot use my world map. This has changed things massively. There is one caveat to that rule. When I am in a capital city, Divinity's Reach, Lion's Arch, Ratasum, the Grove, the Black Citadel, Holbrack, or even Fort Trinity is one of these places, while I'm in one of these locations, I can allow myself to look at the map. And what this does, having no minimap, having no big map, first of all, it destroys any notion, really, that you're going to be getting map completion as a means of leveling up. So no more am I stuck in this tired, annoying situation where I'm running to all the points of interest I've seen before, running to all the vistas, instantly skipping their cutscenes, skipping all of the scouts on the world, you know, the scouts that are the guys that tell you where all of the hearts are, going to the same hearts I've been at before, doing the exact same thing on them that I feel is the most efficient way to get through that heart, finding hearts like, say, the one in Bloodtide Coast where you have to do all that annoying stuff with alchemy in the swamp and getting annoyed that it's more than just combat. It cuts all of that away from the experience of playing the game, and it brings you much closer to just looking at the world and exploring and traveling. And yes, I've been to this road that I'm walking on and talk to you guys about right now, but while I'm playing it under this rule set, I feel very differently about why I'm exploring. I'm not here because I'm making a beeline for this vista because I need it for map completion. I'm walking to this vista because it looks kind of cool that there's a vine here and it's giving me a very minor bit of experience. See, there's a big difference now that I can't feasibly do map completion. You could go to all the effort of trying to get it, but you find it's not worthwhile, and that's combined with the way that the personal story works. And indeed, my third rule, really this is the final rule that I'm playing with that I'm very strict about, and that is the fact I have no maps, I have no access to my maps. You guys might realize this means I cannot access my waypoints, and that is another rule. You cannot waypoint. That is very strict. If you die, if you're like on a real permadeath character, you die, you would delete the toon and you'd start over. However, if I die, I would lose a life, and I can waypoint. I can waypoint to the closest place to me, but aside from that, waypoints are not available. This encourages me to use Asura gates, and this encourages me to think about the terrain and the quickest ways to walk through places with regards to my personal story. See, playing with these two rules, the no maps and the no waypoints, it really shifts the way you level. I'm currently stood at Gw2. There's a very good reason that I'm doing this log right here. It's not just because I'm level 20 and it's a nice sort of benchmark, but it's also because of the way my personal story's been going. Obviously, to complete the challenge, I need to complete my personal story. So, I am now at the point where I'm doing the orders stuff. They've designed it in a very interesting way as an Asura character. You have a bunch of personal story steps out in Metrica province. And what happens when you complete a personal story step is up here in the top right, it will tell you, okay, you need to go somewhere else. But I have no map. I have no way of seeing that little green star on my UI. You know, this reliance on the UI that the devs have deliberately left in the game. I don't have access to this. So what I need to do from that point is I need to go back home. I need to touch base at Ratasum. Maybe stock up on some new supplies. I'll talk about that in a second. And while I'm in Ratasum, I can open my world map and I will find somewhere out in the world my next location I need to go to. Or, as it frequently happens in the early level stuff, you're constantly returning to Ratasum because that's the way the story works. It zigzags you in and out. So you do a quest out in the wilderness, you come back to Ratasum to complete that quest, and while you're at it, you look at your map and you find your next location. And because you can't waypoint, what this means is you spend a lot of time on the road. This could sound hideous to people. It could sound like one of the worst things you could do in Gw2. The game is basically designed to have waypoints. How frustrating would it be to walk these constant long distances? Well, where I am in the plot right now is a really good example of that getting very severe. They send you to Ratasum, you do a bunch of stuff in Ratasum, nowhere else, and then all of a sudden, you've done like one quest in Brisbane Wildlands at this point. All of a sudden, it doesn't send you to Metrica, it doesn't send you to Caledon, it doesn't send you to Brisbane, it sends you here, to Kessex Hills. I have just walked from Ratasum all the way to here just to find Gw2 and complete the next step of my personal story. And honestly, that might sound bad, but while you're playing, and because you're not focusing so much on map completion, it actually becomes a really fun part of the game. It changes your mentality completely when logging in. I find myself when logging into this ranger character each day, instead of thinking, alright, where's my next personal story thing, you know, getting ready to open my map, just waypoint somewhere, zone around all over the place, I have a very real, like, this is going to sound super lame, but I have a like really real connection connection to Tyria where I'm like, right, where did I last leave off? And I like rub my hands together and I'm like, right, okay, I'm out here in Metrica province somewhere. You've got to look around at areas you recognize. Do you recognize that cliff? Do you recognize that building? Figure out where you are because you have no map for reference, and then think to yourself, yeah, what quest was I on? Where am I actually headed? You feel like you actually are in that location of the world because there's not this weird disjoint where you're just teleporting all over the place. It's been incredibly fascinating to play, and as long as you're not trying to like rush through everything, it can be a very good way of leveling up too. I don't have to rely on map completion. There hasn't been a single part of my adventure so far where I have stopped to grind on stuff. There hasn't been a single one where I've said, oh god, you know, I'm really underleveled. You notice I'm level 20 and I'm now on a level 24 personal story step, so it has outleveled me a little bit. But because I'm walking everywhere, I'm constantly seeing events, not just the same events all the time either, might I add. I've seen events while I've been playing this character I never knew existed in Guild Wars 2. I would have expected myself to have seen all of these events. Like, oh yeah, I've spent so much time in Metrica Province. It's not true. I've seen so many events I never knew existed before. Yes, I've seen some repeating themselves, and I may go to the effort of doing them when they repeat themselves, or I may not. But in general, it's been crazy the amount of events that are out there and how fun it feels to actually play them. Because you're doing it for the experience, not just because it's there and you kind of want to ignore it because you know going for map completion stuff would be better. Each time you see an event, you do kind of want to seek it out. I would argue it's not the way the devs originally thought Guild Wars 2 would be played, where they're like, oh yeah, you're going to try and find events because you want to help people in the world. I really don't have that motivation. I'm doing it for the experience, and both like as in terms of an in-game mechanic and the actual experience of playing these events I've never done before. Yes, I went on a long journey out here from Ratasum to Garenhof now, and I've got a long walk back too. I don't just get to reappear Ratasum, I do the quest here and I've got a long walk back. But I'm looking forward to that long walk back. On my way out here, I went through Brisbane Wildlands. I took a couple of detours. On my way home, I'll go probably the more direct route by cutting through Caledon Forest, and I'm going to see a bunch of different stuff there. I'm going to find some hearts, and I'm not avoiding doing hearts. When I find them, then I'll decide to complete them, and I'm going to find some other things. If I find a Vista, for example, I will go to get that Vista, just because it will give me the experience, and because I'm going to it because, like, it's like I chose to. It's not because it's this hassle. It's not this, you know, this tiny thing and a big goal. I just want map completion, come and get through it. I found I'm watching all of the vistas. Yeah, I've seen them before, but I'm watching the vistas. It's even helping me get better vantage points on where I am. I generally know the geography of Tyria. I feel like I could see almost any screenshot of this game and take a good guess at where I was located. So it's not likely I'm going to get lost very much. But the vistas are fun for that, you know? And speaking of getting lost, I have been vaguely lost a couple of times. This ties into the idea of it being a permadeath challenge as well, because you can get a little bit underleveled. I just explained to you guys, I walked through Brisbane Wildlands and Keswick's, in the top left of Keswick's to get here. It's very weird when you're playing permadeath and you're exploring the world like this, in the way you start avoiding areas. For example, I found myself near a centaur camp, and I thought, oh yeah, I'll kill a couple of centaurs there. There's probably a point of interest here. I can, you know, get some experience. But as soon as I started fighting them, they just like mowed me over, and I realized I was in serious danger. These things were all level 24, and I got really worried. So not only did I walk away from that centaur camp, but then I considered, oh god, I can't really keep going south because enemies get more dangerous here. When dying comes at such a great risk, I ended up just avoiding that whole section of the map. I just gave it a huge curtail. I didn't just try and rush through it because, hey, it's not going to be that punishing. I'll just unlock a waypoint and keep moving. It really affected the way I explored the world in a way that I've just not experienced while playing Guild Wars 2 before. So those three rules together have really changed my perspective. Here's a bit of a story about an experience I had here. Took me a long time to get it to Garenhof. Let's do a /age. Alright, I'm level 20. I've been playing this character for 16 hours. I was talking in that starting over video about the idea of slowing things down, of experiencing the world, speaking to NPCs more. This is exactly what I've been doing, but because of all the travel, and that lack of reliance on map completion, it takes you a lot longer to level up. There is no like power leveling and grinding through things. As I say, I don't feel like I've grinded at all, but I've actually played a lot longer in this character and only got to level 20 than I could have imagined before. It protracts the adventure, actually makes it feel better paced, you know? It's not just, oh, one crappy personal story instance to another crappy personal story instance, oh, let's quickly craft a bunch of stuff up. The pacing has changed completely. So, it took me a long time to get it to Garenhof, and I was really happy and proud once I'd got here. But let's go back to what I was talking about with the fact you don't have a map, and all you have is this very small description up here of where you need to go, or perhaps if you want to reference it, which I've tried, but it's not been useful, you know, your story log, maybe this will help you find out where you need to go. They never really have so far. In fact, this is something I've still been neglecting that I regret a little, but hey, there you go. So I got to Garenhof, And I had to remember what my map looked like from back in Ratasum. Back in Ratasum, when I was there last, I opened my world map, I looked at where I needed to go, I saw a green star somewhere around about where Gw2 was. It was in fogged over map territory because I'd never explored there before. I couldn't get anything precise. All I knew was that somewhere in this city was a personal story entrance. Well, that was a big problem. I spent a long time walking around here, starting to panic, actually, because I couldn't find the entrance to the damn instance. I was looking everywhere. I was looking at that text. It says, meet Agent Batanga outside Gw2. Okay, so I can't find it in the city. Maybe I've got to look out here. And I started to get really worried. One of the earliest things I ever talked about on my channel was how disappointed I was in Gw2, because it's such a cool place. It's got the Wizard's Tower, but there's nothing to do here. No reason to truly inspect the areas, speak to the NPCs. But here I was in this challenge, like looking really closely, seeing what houses I could go into. There's a house over there where I know the prison is because I've done the story before, where I thought, oh, maybe it's upstairs in the loft. Alright, I'll go up there and I'll check. And I couldn't find the personal story entrance. And I started to get really conflicted. I began to have this issue where I realized, oh god, I may have to walk back. I may have to go back home, back to Ratasum, just so I can look at my map now that it's unfogged and get a better understanding of where it is. Or maybe this was my incentive to try and go to another city that might be closer. Maybe I should have gone on a quest to Divinity's Reach so that I could have looked at my map again and found my entrance. Or maybe could I have risked going to Lion's Arch? All the enemies over there are much stronger though, and if I die, it's game over. So what do I want to do? I really did start to get very conflicted. But at the last moment, I actually didn't see it from here. I was up there. I went to that vista. I thought the entrance was up there. I realized it had been right here, and I had just foolishly missed it somehow. Usually with personal story entrances, this could sound like an unnecessary frustration, and it was something I was worried about while I was beginning this challenge. How well designed were they? We don't get any indication, but it tends to work very well. That green star, I could jump. I don't want to jump. Like, it's weird the way it affects you when you're near cliffs and stuff. You like feel a little bit dizzy or a little bit cautious whenever you're very high up, because you never want to risk dropping off a large place just in case you might die, and then it would be game over. But I could swim all the way out into this water over here, and I would still see that quest marker. They appear from miles and miles away, and it does mean that doing things like getting high up, finding big geographical locations like lakes, and then looking to the south of them, you might be able to spy the entrance. So you're up there, you can see, I'll have to zoom in on the editing probably because of YouTube, but you can see the quest entrance. It gets smaller, but it doesn't disappear completely, and this is very helpful. I'll say that the game isn't perfect with this kind of telegraphing. This can be frustrating on its own. Something else that could be frustrating is when you enter the personal story instances, you may find that because you don't have a map, you don't know where those like out of instance boundaries are. And sometimes you are a little bit worried that you're going to walk out of the bounds. Like, you'll go to an area and it will say, all right, here, go speak to someone. And you can't see anyone around you, so you're like, wait, which way do I go? Do I go up the road, down the road, off the road? Where am I meant to go? In general, though, if you just follow your gut, you do tend to stay within the story bounds, and it does give you the message that you might be kicked if you're going the wrong way, and it's not so bad. Dynamic events can be a bit of an issue, though. One feature I regret doesn't work very well on this challenge is, you know how a big part of Guild Wars 2 is NPCs will run up to you and say, help, help, please, my children have been kidnapped, and you speak to them, and they mark a dynamic event on your map. Yeah, that doesn't really work here. You know, you have people saying, help me, and you're inclined to speak to NPCs. I've been speaking to an awful lot of them, and they'll say, please help me, something's going on, but it's so far away, it's very difficult for you to feasibly know exactly where you should be headed a lot of the time. And what this can mean is you want to complete these events, of which there are tons. Like, you see so many events while you're playing through the game, and events, as I say, that I've never seen before, but unfortunately they're just out of reach. You can, again, try and get high, see what you can find, but often I find that's a big difficulty, and when you're so desperate for experience so that the personal story doesn't outlevel you, that can be a bit annoying. I kind of like this idea that you're racing for experience quite often while playing this. It reminds me a lot more of other traditional MMOs. I've talked before about how I actually miss a little bit of traditional MMO design, you know, grinding, not necessarily going out and grinding on mobs in a field, but you get a little bit more of that. You know, you're fighting for the experience in this challenge rather than it just being handed to you hand over fist, and you barely even pay attention to this bar down here at the bottom of your screen. Like, I'm very aware right now that I'm halfway to my next level, and I'm considering what maybe I can do in the area, what I can remember that I might be able to do, what heart quests are in the area, for example. Another feature, though, obviously, that I have been using a lot that I wouldn't while leveling other characters is the idea of the scouts. I even mentioned this on the previous video that I thought this would happen. It certainly does. While I'm out in the world, it might just happen that I can find a scout. And if I find that scout, that is a method for me to get a map without going all the way home. So one thing I could have done here is not gone all the way to Lion's Arch or Divinity's Reach or Ratasum. I could have wandered these fields hoping to find a scout somewhere. And if I do, that scout will tell me about the general area. He will open up my map for me, and I'll see, oh yeah, look, there's Garenhof, and there's the entrance to my personal story. I tend to use scouts a lot, and I've even had the situation where I've been cautious of completing too many heart quests in the area, maybe at first, if I don't really know where I am in the world, just because I know that'll lock a scout off for me somewhere. Speaking of completing heart quests, another thing I found a lot of fun, and I may end up using as a rule when I do a true permadeath character after I've got this guy to 80, is the idea that you can't buy stuff from vendors. As I say, really I'm only playing with 3 rules here, right? The no waypoints, no maps, and a limited number of lives. That's really all I've been doing. But another thing that I think could be very interesting is not being able to buy stuff from those generic merchants all over the place. If I show you guys my inventory right now, I'll run away from that ogre there. You'll see, okay, I've got a mini on me, got a crude salvage kit. Here I've got some gear that I don't have the levels for. This is something I've never really done in Guild Wars 2. Holding on to gear in my bags for when I actually hit that level. I really want these stats because I'm generally under-leveled anyway for the personal story, so I really want these things. Key farming has taught me a lot in this game about just how effective adding, say, minor runes to your gear can be. And so now I've got this level 24 gear I'm just sort of hanging on to. I like this idea. The fact, over here I've got some accessories. I bought these from a Karma vendor. I'm checking the wares of every single Karma vendor I can, just in case they give me better stuff. I was playing a bit of a Condi Ranger before, but I'm thinking of going Power now. So here, look, I've bought 2 of these Truffle Charms while I was out in Kessex Hills. I bought some of these things that turn you into pigs as well, just for a bit of fun. I've bought these specifically so that when I get to that level, I can replace this Condi stuff and keep going. It's been a pleasure to actually look at the wares and care about the wares of these people. That said, let's talk about one big focus of the previous video, and that was the idea of the soft reset. What I did before making this character was I threw all of my materials onto characters, got everything out of my bank, all my gold into a guild bank, and by doing this, I got that very fresh perspective of playing the game, how much gold people end up getting and stuff. So here, I'm level 20, I've almost got a gold to my name. My dungeon tokens, I've got a bunch because I was dungeon running in between. The soft reset, I will say, has been very punishing for someone who wants to play other characters. It's really frustrating for me to be having... I have a lot of fun on this toon, but if my guild is running Worm or something, I'm really tempted to go do it, but I can't because then I'd be getting karma and you have to respend it and stuff, and it's just irritating. But dungeon tokens aside, all of this stuff on my character right now is what I've earned on this character. I've got 91 silver, and I've got 2,000 karma. This has taught me a few things about the currencies in Guild Wars 2 that I wasn't fully aware of. Number one, there's nowhere near enough karma sinks. You get tons of karma in this game, way too much. I haven't ever gone to a heart vendor who's had something cool, but I didn't have enough money for. Or he cost so much that I was a little concerned I wouldn't have money for other stuff later. You have way too much karma in this game. It sort of takes this whole mechanic out of it, you know, and that's a bit of a shame to me. Gold, however, I would say has a lot of really strong, decent sinks. I explained earlier this idea of going back to your city every now and then to resupply and also be able to look at your map. Well, resupplying to me has actually been making extensive use of my trading post. Here you'll notice in my bag, I've got a bunch of minor sigils and minor runes. These aren't things I'd use on normal characters. I think on my thief, I got like level 30 armor, which was cultural armor because I just had enough money for it. And then I leveled to 80 without ever looking at my gear again. How different is this? This time I'm hoarding gear early is for the second I can level into it. And I've bought a bunch of minor sigils and runes. The economy of the game now that launch has gone a long way past means all of these things are very viable for you to get. If we have a look over at my gear, you'll see all my stuff here has got, you know, 2 minor runes of the strength just to give me these extra stats, which are really coming in handy. This has been a lot of fun to actually play into that, to use the trading post to buy stuff I wouldn't have before. I've got bloodlust sigils on both my sets. I'm even using a sigil of luck here, and I'm paying attention to that when I get that in loot drops. It's a fun thing you can do. It actually means whenever you find a trading post, you might be interested in spending some money. As you're leveling up, you get access to better sigils, better runes, more stat combos on your gear that you might end up wanting to buy. And because there is all this stuff you can spend your gold on, I find the gold sinks are really well balanced. I think I'm pretty much on track to be able to buy cultural tier 1 when I get to level 30, which will be a big milestone. You know, you get your elite, you'll have your traits very soon at that point. Obviously, I don't have experience of the trait system just yet, but that should all be quite fun to look into when I get there. One thing that has disappointed me a bit about the soft reset is the idea of crafting. One of the things I did was I got rid of all my crafting mats because I remember very clearly at launch where I was crafting as I leveled my first toon, that it was really exciting to come to, say, Keswick's Hills and find that there was a bunch of new ore, you know, finding silver ore for the first time, finding gold ore, platinum stuff, tearing up my crafting stuff, my gathering tools. I haven't really had that experience. Now, crafting is a good way to keep leveled and keep going, so with the soft rate reset, that would be a way to sort of make it feel like it's less grindy. As I say, I don't think it's grindy at all, so mostly I haven't bothered with crafting. Crafting still bores me in Guild Wars 2. It's still not very interesting to me, but it definitely is an option people could have if they were doing this kind of challenge. I might find when I play a true hardcore character with one death and that's it, that I want to be over leveled or at least on level every time I try a personal story instance, just to reduce that risk. And because I want to bump those levels higher, I might turn to crafting and then I will have that experience, but certainly for this character I haven't had it. Maybe I have more thoughts if I do another log. Let's talk a little bit about lore, about personal story. I was hoping that this would give me another perspective on the personal story. I explained that I played the game at launch, ended up having a kind of a negative taste towards it, and I've brooded on that for a long time without really refreshing my mind or looking at the evidence again, and I was wondering, you know, maybe are my opinions slightly off? So far, the personal story has not been very interesting to me at all. I'm an Asura, so I get all that stuff about gore as well. I get a fuller picture than most characters do. But mostly it hasn't been that interesting. I will say, though, that doesn't mean it hasn't been fun. Most of the things I've done, so my character here, through whatever reason, have ended up being like kind of funny stories. I think ArenaNet do the funny stories very well. So particularly my 0 to 10 story was a story I'd read about on the wiki a long time ago, never actually played it for myself, but I ended up creating like a couple of robots that fell in love with one another. And my 10 to 20 story was pretty fun too. I had a cool mission where I played with a friend, and I was playing as a giant golem and he was a little supportive golem that I just thought was phenomenal. You never really see stuff like that in the personal story. So it has been fun. But in terms of big lore, and you know how well the Zaitan stuff has been handled, I really don't have much experience yet. Obviously, Traherne's not even come into the story yet. I've not been a part of the Order. A lot of the really weak things haven't expressed themselves yet, so that will maybe have to be something for a future log. I will say though, speaking to NPCs and stuff, I've relearned stuff that I'd forgotten about so badly I didn't even know it was in the game. Makes me question whether I even knew it in the first place. A lot of interesting things about Ratasum and about Metrica Province that I just completely forgotten, like the name of the area outside it even being Sorundra. I totally forgot about that. I had no idea until I made this character that they were building a second Ratasum. You know, that should be common knowledge, that they're building another Asuran city bigger than Ratasum, that there's like a holographic projection of what it's eventually going to look like in one of the labs out there, that so many of the Asura are talking about that huge project. And that was just something that completely slipped out of my mind. I've been to areas that I haven't seen since launch that I'd completely forgotten about. The events I've already talked about, and it's been really eye-opening. It's been interesting to see characters using words like sexy and seeing the word crap. Like, can you imagine them releasing Living Story right now, where Casimir says, "Hey Marjorie, do you think I look sexy right now?" Like, it just wouldn't happen, and yet this dialogue is in Guild Wars 2. I've seen typos on NPCs. In fact, I think in my first hour of gameplay, I found a typo on an NPC out in the docks in Ratasum, and it's kind of sad to see not just the fact that people don't have this general knowledge, but the fact that even typos are there. It just shows how few people, how a few of the devs even, have spoken to those NPCs and how little reason there is to go to them in the gameplay. Really, I was only speaking to them because as I'm a little bit more immersed in the world right now, I'm always a little bit more interested when I find an NPC. It breaks up the idea of just walking all the time, you know. You entertain yourselves as you travel by speaking to NPCs and seeing things you usually wouldn't. Combat mod has obviously been a huge part of this as well. The reason why I have no UI or minimap at the very least is because of combat mod. You can enable a mode of combat mod that turns off the minimap but doesn't do any of the combat changes. I've been doing the whole thing with the combat mod changes. The only key I have rebound on my entire account is the key for opening the map. Everything else is as it normally was. So, if I were to use my normal Guild Wars 2 shortcut instead of the combat mod one, I would just be playing Guild Wars 2 like normal. Absolutely everything's like normal. So it's really easy to swap between characters. And I've got very used to the combat of combat mod, and I do think it has been a big improvement. I was playing with a friend who jumped over a cliff at one point, and I just very naturally looked over the edge, and it felt like I was playing an action RPG. Combat mod is great. Maybe it's not everyone's cup of tea, but I've had a lot of fun killing enemies with it, using the new targeting systems and, you know, everything that's involved with it. So, I've really not got very many comments or thoughts on it. Playing a ranger, by the way, has been pretty awesome. I love the boars and stuff. I've learned so much about rangers. Amazing. Look at this guy. He forages plasma for you, which gives you every boon in the game. Look at this crap. I used to use this in PvP. This is so fun. And you can get like boars. One of the reasons why I'm playing an Asura Ranger is because I can fear and daze people for ridiculous lengths of time. But those are really fun. I've had a lot of fun looking at the different pets and the different stats they've got. I didn't realize, for example, that Greatsword 5 made your next pet's attack do a crap ton more damage. I'm learning a lot, and it has been fun. Definitely, if you guys are going to do something like this, do it on a character or a class you haven't played before. That's really all I've got to say. It's been crazy positive. It's been really fun. I'm definitely recommending it to people. There may come a day where I stream this, permadeath characters, as I say, and it will be a big challenge to get to Zaitan without dying, but I think that's one of the really fun things about it that could make it such a good thing to stream. You know, it's an extra little thing. One final rule I might do on other characters as well is the idea of skill challenges out in the world, because I really do think this would be a good idea. I've been playing some pretty old school RPGs in my free time recently, and they've inspired me about something to do with Guild Wars 2. You tend to find in Guild Wars 2, after like level 7, every time you level up, you get a skill point. And that means there's a finite amount of skill points, in theory, you can get in Guild Wars 2, until you take into account champ bags, and you take into account skill challenges around the world. Well, the idea of this rule would be that you cannot pop skill scrolls from champions, and you also cannot use skill challenges you find around like communes, killing bosses, stuff like that. Now, that may sound like that's a big detraction from the gameplay. It cuts away things you can enjoy about the game, but I really think it could be a big positive, because imagine this, right? You get to level 80 and you're no longer allowed to spend any more skill points you get from leveling up. This means you have a finite pool of skill points you can use to unlock skills, and it adds a bit of that traditional RPG mechanic where you can't become a master of everything. As you're playing that character, as you're going through this challenge to try and beat Zaitan, you have to be careful about which skills you want to actually unlock. And it actually gets a bit better than that too. Think about the way the new trait system is being handled. You may be tempted, because some of the traits are only unlocked through, say, map completion, which is such a chore for us here. You may want to be buying your traits through the skill point trainers. But because gold might not be an issue, the other thing that they cost are skill points. So it would be like you actually have to decide on your character, alright, which skill trees do I want to go down and which traits do I want to spend my points on? You've got a finite amount, and you have to like make a character build out of that finite amount. Which traits do you end up going for? Which ones do you want to go to the effort of unlocking for yourselves, so that you maybe can have a bit more variety with your other skills? I think that could be really fun. Just a thought, something I'm not playing with here. It didn't occur to me until I was well into this character, but something I may do in another guy. I definitely am going to be playing more, streamed or not. And yeah, so this is my log, guys. A lot of you have been asking me when you've been seeing me on this soon, hey, how's it going? I wanted to keep you all in the loop. I also wanted people to realize that I didn't like just drop the idea after throwing it out there. It took me a while to get into it. But absolutely, I'm just, most times I'm like, yeah, I want to get back in, I want to play more of my Asura. I'm even like starting to out-level people who have been playing along with me. It's really fun if you play with a friend, by the way. Really fun. You have no map, so you have no like blue dot all the time that tells you, oh, this is where your ally is. It's not there. So if you get separated, you have to ask your friend, hey, where are you? And they say, oh, I'm by a lake. Oh, I'm at that school where there's loads of little scrit. I'm over there, all right? Okay, we'll meet up here. Look, we're both going to the same place. We'll meet here. It's really cool. It's much more immersive. Anyway, I've talked to you long. Thanks very much for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time.